The Stop Drop Gaming's F1 show is brought to you by Stop Drop Gaming's F1 section, supporting F1 2015 on Xbox One and F1 2014 on Xbox 360. League spaces are available. Visit stopdropgaming.com today to sign up.
Welcome to Stop Drop Gaming F1 show. Today we have Stephen.
Hello.
Ollie.
Hello.
And Stewart.
Hello.
Okay lads, so this weekend was Singapore, and for the third race in a row now, Mercedes have fallen short. This time it seemed a little more serious, having such a lack of pace in qualifying and race. Are we going to see the same thing in Japan, or was it just a one-time thing, Stuart?
I think we all knew with Singapore being as tight a street circuit as it was, the Mercedes could not make the most of the engine advantage. But we didn't realise it how much they were reliant on the engine and, well, really high-speed tracks to make the most of their pace. But I think they'll be back, but it depends on how strong they will be.
Ollie?
Yeah, they didn't really know what happened, did they? They couldn't work it out why they were so slow, and then they blamed it on the tyres, and then Pirelli said it's not the tyres, and they were like, well, it is the tyres, and they had a little back and forward thing. They did something wrong, obviously, and I'm sure it'll be fixed by Japan. Speaking
of Japan, also we've got rumours coming out that Jenson Button is to announce his retirement in Japan, and obviously being a McLaren fan, Stephen, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, kind of disappointed, especially on the back of the season that Jenson's had. He's made the best of a bad situation, but if he's not enjoying it, he's not enjoying it. That still hasn't stopped me sending a barrel load of tweets and Facebook statuses to every time that someone's posted, say, "Don't you dare quit." So yeah, it's disappointing because obviously you want as many Brits on the grid as you can.
I mean, he's been in the season for a really long time. He's obviously one of the most experienced drivers on the grid. Do you think that now, coming to this point in his career, he's kind of run out of steam? And do you think he feels comfortable with what he's achieved, Stuart?
I think with being in F1 since about 2000, if I remember rightly, it's not probably got the same throw as it used to, especially with the cars the way they are now. But with the way that he's gone from, in the space of a couple of seasons, to having one of the fastest cars on the grid to mid to bottom of the pack, it's not going to be where he wants to be. So at least I think he'll be considering a new challenge, to say the least, probably endurance.
Well, it's going to be difficult to see if McLaren can obviously come back from where they are, seeing the deficit they've got. I don't think they've done too bad from where they were at the start of the season, but whether they actually keep Jenson, I think it's kind of his time up now. I don't think he's got much more to do. I mean, he's got that World Championship in his pocket. I think he'll be quite happy to walk away, I suppose.
I'm a huge Jenson Button fan. I would be really disappointed if he left at the end of the season, and I don't think it's right. I mean, F1 drivers always want to leave on a high, but he seems to refuse to want to leave McLaren Honda, which is probably a bad decision. But then where does he go? He can't really go to Ferrari. I don't think he could take Kimi Räikkönen's seat, at least not till 2017, and then he'll be probably past it. If he went to Haas, well, we don't know how fast they are.
Hasn't one of their seats been taken by Grosjean and the other by what is supposedly going to be one of the Ferrari development drivers, whether that be Gutierrez?
Officially, or just rumours?
Officially, Grosjean's got a seat.
Yes.
Rumours, it's supposedly going to be one of the development drivers of Jev or Gutierrez.
Well, let's change the subject to Ferrari quickly. Seeing they've capitalised on the Mercs again, failing to even get on the podium in Singapore with either of their drivers. Is there a chance that Sebastian can get a nose in and possibly maybe win the championship under the nose of the Mercedes?
No.
He's 49 points behind at this point with 150 on the board to go.
So here's the deal, right? Every time Sebastian Vettel has a race like Singapore, the actual person who's the closest and more likely to challenge Lewis Hamilton, Nico Rosberg, gets further and further away. if you have more missed opportunities like Singapore for Mercedes, all it's actually going to do is just strengthen, I would suggest, Hamilton's stranglehold on what's going to be back-to-back championships.
It's pretty much, at this point, if he gets the back-to-back, it's going to confirm number one driver permanently. And know that it's probably not going to be written in any contracts, but it's going to just say something to the bigwigs, so to speak.
The only way Rosberg's going to win a championship now is he's got to do a Vettel. He's got to leave the team he's in and go somewhere else.
Yeah.
I mean, with the car that Nico's had this season and Hamilton has had, it's 7 wins for Hamilton, 3 for Rosberg and 3 for Vettel. Compare the machinery and compare the jobs that they've done.
It's a very interesting contrast as compared to last season, because obviously by this point last year it was like a lot closer than it was. I think going into the season, obviously losing in Abu Dhabi to Hamilton, that's really screwed Rosberg up a lot. Especially this year has not helped his confidence whatsoever, I don't think.
I don't think it can be underestimated that his personal situation has changed. He's now got a different set of things to be thinking about. Hamilton is footloose, fancy free, doesn't give a crap. He's just out there for himself. Rosberg is a family man now. He's got a wife, he's got a child. There are other things that are going around his head, whereas Hamilton is unclouded. Rosberg has a bit on his plate, I'd say. I don't think that he's necessarily suffered for it. It's just at the times when he needed to make that killer blow, I'm not sure he's been in the right frame of mind to do it.
He's always going to have that what if in the back of his mind when someone's going to cloud his judgment effectively, and that's going to be it, his family and commitments to that.
I'll tell you what happens when you get that what if. That's about the time that drivers announce their retirements. And obviously, Rosberg's not going to announce his retirement anytime soon. However, like I said, if he's serious about winning the championship and he can't do it against Hamilton in the same machinery, he's got to seriously have a look and see where he can go, in my opinion.
But where can he go?
Well, indeed. If you were a team boss and Nico Rosberg comes onto the market, would you not be interested in him?
Okay, you got to think about this from the major teams. Really, you got Red Bull. They're going to use their young driver program.
It depends if Red Bull gets a Ferrari engine next year or not.
So to speak, the big teams. We've got Red Bull. We've got Williams. They've already got their driver lineup locked in. They may be looking for 2017 to replace Massa. That's pretty much agreed.
We're talking 2017 here. Yeah, because both the Mercedes drivers are tied up, aren't they, officially for next year?
Yeah, then it's a case of who's going to drive alongside Seb.
Yeah, well, exactly, and that's what I would say.
It's basically the $1 million question across the whole grid at this point. Is it going to be Bottas? Is it going to be a Grosjean? Is it going to be Nico? Is it going to be a development driver? Who knows at this point?
But do you think Nico Rosberg would go into a team like Ferrari and take a second driver seat again?
No.
After going second driver to Michael Schumacher and now Lewis Hamilton.
But like you said, it kind of goes with the territory. If you want to have a top drive in a top team, you've got to try and go up against the best. So if it didn't work with Hamilton, he'd have to try it against another former world champion, wouldn't he?
Then I think at that point you're going to have the young driver program and Gutierrez. Okay, then he might not be as good a driver, but he brings, oil money from Mexico? Or telecoms money? That's going to weigh into the Ferrari decision as well.
I think the problem with Rosberg is throughout his career, when he was at Williams, Mercedes, he's never really been able to be a very good driver as a teammate. For example, if you look at like Kimi, Lewis, Jensen, that they've all beaten really good teammates, to be able to win the championship. Obviously, Lewis beating Fernando, Jensen beating Rubens, and Kimi. I guess they beaten Massa because at that point he was as good as a world champion for the next season. Rosberg's not really been able to do that. He wasn't able to beat Mark Webber, he wasn't able to beat Schumacher, and now he can't beat Lewis. I personally don't think he has what it takes to be a world champion, but he just falls short of it.
He's not living up to effectively his surname, which, okay, he had talent, but that certainly helped him get to where he is.
I think he needs to accept that he's the second driver and not a world champion.
I just think it's weird how Formula One works. If you have a name of a previous driver, like Rosberg, for example, PK, even Senna, and Verstappen, it carries weight so far, but that won't carry you all the way. As we've seen with PK, didn't really do that well. Bruno Senna had a little bit of a run, didn't amount to much.
Bruno Senna didn't really have a run, did he? He never really got a chance.
He never really got a brilliant enough car. I mean, compare, for example, this season, we got son of Carlos Sainz, former world rally champion, and then we had Max Verstappen in. Both sons of former racers in rally and F1. One's done quite clearly better than the other, but
I don't know. I think Sainz has. If you're talking about Verstappen doing quite well, I think Sainz has kept him quite honest.
He's kept him honest, but I think when you just going from a straight, kept him honest, done a good job, but there's 29 points of difference there.
Yeah, I'm not so sure that can be read into so much. Yes, Verstappen's made some good overtakes, but then apparently his dad will kick him in the goolies if he ever gives the place back. So, with that kind of pressure, what can you do?
I mean, maybe that's what we you need in a sense, because if you look at
what your dad's saying, he'll kick you in the balls.
I mean, look at Maurice, for example. He was obviously very stern with Lewis, and look where that's gotten him. As far as the two Toro Rosso boys go, end of the day, how Christian Horner's going to look at it, there's only going to really be one extra seat for a Red Bull driver who's outperforming who in Toro Rosso, and obviously whatever driver's got more points on the board will eventually make that move up to Red Bull when there's a seat available.
I wouldn't underestimate Fernando Alonso trying to have a sniff around a Red Bull seat once there's a Ferrari engine in the back.
Yeah, I'll go with that one. I mean, him trying to get that elusive third title.
Yeah, he needs to have a shave first.
Maybe the beard is what's doing it for him. He just doesn't
needs to go back to the baby face.
Anyway,
as opposed to the heel.
So throughout the Singapore race, multiple cars obviously suffered DNFs as any normal race, but a fair few of them were actually gearbox related issues, and there was a part of the track which included the new section that was done for this year, and the drivers were told in a briefing before the race and qualifying, if you upshift or downshift in a certain part of the track, if you do it enough times throughout the race or qualifying, it will eventually mess up your gearbox. And as we saw with, I think it was both Williams, I know Felipe Massa had that. He came through the pits to retire, then it fixed itself, and obviously going back round on the same part, it happened again. What is your thoughts, Ollie, on this? It's kind of reminiscent of the tyre issue in 2005, where the track it kind of messes up the car a little bit.
Yeah, obviously it's something that the track officials need to sort out for next year, I think.
Stephen?
I don't think it's anything to do with the track officials at all. At the end of the day, the track is the track, end of, and the engineers have got to do the best job they can and produce the best vehicle to get around that track in the fastest time possible. Formula One's always about margins and pushing those boundaries. So some teams clearly decided they were going to push their boundaries, and parts certainly weren't strong enough to take the pressure of the strain. So if you know you've got an issue as a driver, obviously you've got to work around it. Some were clever, some weren't. Those that were clever stood on top of the podium. They didn't suffer any issues. Those that weren't so clever went back to the pits.
Speaking of track design, when I went to Valencia a few weeks ago, I went around the old F1 track, and my aunt and uncle took me around what was going to be the F1 track, which is actually more in city, in the sort of arty area. And they built this really weird bridge that was meant to be held by some gravity engineering stuff. And in fact, they had to build a frame over it to support it in the end. But it was going to be part of this F1 track, but before they modified it anyway. And after they modified it, it had a big hump. And I thought that could be quite an interesting addition to an F1 track, that having a massive hump on a bridge. So they'd have to slow down just to the right speed, so they didn't jump and fly off the top of the hump.
I think it'd be more that they'd have to slow down to the point where they can go over it, let alone jumping over it, let alone actually not damaging any of the floor.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it'd be a fascinating challenge to get to the right speed, so you didn't fly over it instead of, rather than just go over it normally.
So what we're saying is, after the debate of Formula One shouldn't slow down because we want to keep open cockpits, etc. No, wait. Now for safety, F1 tracks have speed humps.
No, it's not a speed hump. It's just a humped bridge. It's not like a sleeping policeman.
Well, they put people on the track, didn't they? So.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, actually, that brings us on to the next topic. Actually, on lap 36, it was a British chap, funnily enough, named Yoverman Doka. He actually jumped over the barrier on turn 13, and he just went for a stroll down the back straight. I mean, how crazy must you be to do that with oncoming cars?
Was he protesting for something?
He wasn't actually. He generally just.
Or was it just like that guy in China a few years back who just thought it was part of the experience? I get to drive the cars.
Daniel Ricciardo was joking in after race interview and saying that he got some nice Instagram pictures. So if anyone's got his Instagram account, I'm definitely following him.
I can imagine. I mean, it's certainly odd because during the race when there was yellow flags, I was looking in the background to see if if the car went off. I just looked to the right, and then you just see this guy walking down the thing. I spat the water out of my mouth just to say, "What is this guy doing?" I was in shock. I couldn't believe it.
Wasn't he wearing a skirt? Or
No,
I just got bad eyesight.
Doesn't David Beckham call it a sarong?
I mean, what would it? Okay, this is a question to all three of you. How much would it? We have to pay you to get you to do that.
What, to wear a skirt or to walk onto an F1 track?
To walk onto the track.
You wouldn't have to pay me much to wear a skirt.
To walk on a track with F1 cars coming the other way.
Well, that was a pretty wide bit of track that he was walking down, and he hugged that barrier quite a lot. I don't know. 6 months in prison, and with all the niceties, shall we say, that go with the experience of being in prison versus taking a 30-second stroll down an F1 track. I'm a big F1 fan, but I'm also a big fan of my anal virginity, so no thank you.
Did you get 6 months in prison?
Yeah.
Wow.
Luckily, Nelson Piquet Jr. weren't driving.
Yeah, right.
There's been a whole other story if that happened.
Hang on a minute. Didn't Nelson Piquet's son flip his car recently?
9 times.
Yeah, I saw that.
I did actually post when I saw that. I said, who was the check in the post to this time?
Well, coming up to the latter stage of the race, there was actually some team orders from the two Toro Rosso drivers, and it was actually aimed at Max Verstappen, telling him to let Carlos through because he let him through to be unlapped early in the race. Obviously, Verstappen calmly replied, "No."
I don't think it was very calm, was it? It was like a little kid who's thrown his toys at the pram.
Yeah, petulant child is how I think I referred to him earlier.
Yeah, I think he was wrong. I mean, Carlos Sainz is what let him through 4 times now to have a go at the car in front, and every time that Verstappen's been asked, he always says no. I don't know. I think that he should maybe be a team player. F1 teams are all about, in F1 it's all about the team, and if he's not being a team player, then he won't last very long.
Yeah, I think the fact that he's trying to, people have let him through, teammate, and returned the favours to him in the past, so he could try and do things. Yet he's not willing to do this. He's acting like someone who shouldn't be in the sport just because of how he's acting. Like, no, I'm ahead now. It's like a 18-year-old acting like a child.
Well, he is a child.
He's going to get a bad
issue.
rep. He's going to get a bad rep. That's the thing, and nobody's going to want to work with him. He goes to another team, or he tries to go to another team, and that driver still in that team is going to say, "No, you're not bringing him as a second driver or whatever."
I think the problem is maybe he's starting to buy into his own hype.
Yeah, maybe.
Because if you watch the Sky Sports interview with him afterwards, where Simon Lazenby brought it up with him, and he was quite adamant, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm here to race. I'm here to get the best position I possibly can. And that got the better result for the team. The team response was, well, ideally, we would have let Carlos through to have a go at the car in front. And if he got through, great. If he hadn't, then Max would have had the place back. So I can understand his point of view. I just think he's wrong.
It's a lot of give and take, and he's not willing to give.
See, here's the thing. All three of you it's like you three against me on this opinion. From what I understand and what the transcripts say, the reason they wanted him to be let past was because obviously earlier in the beginner stages he let Max unlap Carlos, and obviously throughout the course of the race Max actually overtook Carlos without any team orders or letting through. So he got through off of his own back through that. And then fair enough, Carlos was maybe could have had a go at Perez. I think it would have been a bit of a waste of time personally, because he was a bit far behind at that point. And I think the only reason he would have let him through was because he did obviously let him through for the lap car, if that makes sense. Not for the actual position where if he let him through to have a go at Perez and let him back through, similar to what Red Bull did with Ricciardo and Kvyat in Monaco, fair enough. But if he's to let him back through and lose a place, it's because he was lapped. I don't really think that's fair.
The thing is, though, is if the team give an order and you work for the team, you follow that order, in my opinion. The team gave him an order, he should have followed it. It doesn't matter if he liked it or not. He takes that up with the team offline, away from the public eye, later on, and they discuss it and they come to a resolution and everyone goes away happy. You don't do it publicly, let a million, billion, or however many viewers F1's got these days listen to a petulant little child scream.
Yeah, I mean, any other job, if your manager tells you to do something, you do it. You don't
Exactly.
say no. You just get fired.
I mean, we had this whole debate over the one critical sentence that we'll remember. Fernando is faster than you.
Got a better one. Multi-21, Seb. Multi-21.
The difference is Seb was fighting for a world championship and Verstappen isn't.
My only disagreement with that is, in a sense, obviously it's not as much of a scale as my example I'm about to say, but I think it's down to the principle. Do you guys remember in Austria with the two Ferraris where Rubens was leading?
And Rubens pretty much gave it to him on the line itself on the last lap.
Yeah.
Just as a bit of an FU.
Obviously, like I said, it's not on the same scale. Obviously, he's not fighting for a championship. But at the same time, he's still fighting to get somewhere in the sport in his rookie season. And I think it's been blown hugely out of proportion.
There's better ways to do it.
You make friends in that area there. You're not going to make friends disobeying instruction.
It seems that the nice guy always ends up being the second driver, and the person who uses their initiative and goes against team orders usually ends up winning, i.e. Sebastian Vettel and co. Like, maybe that's what some drivers need, is to have a bit of a backbone against the team, because if you don't show a backbone against the team, then they'll be able to push you around a lot more. Basically, like what Ferrari ended up doing with Rubens, they pushed him about because he let them, if that makes sense.
Chris, I'm just going to make the point. He's currently in what team? Toro Rosso, which the odds are, all being well, he's going to go into what seat? Inferior Red Bull one. Now, the sister teams, and one is quite clearly the junior team. Now, if he can't follow orders at the junior team, why in God's name would they even consider him for a seat at the big team?
Well, they wouldn't, is the answer, isn't it?
Yeah.
The thing is, to go back to Rubens Barrichello, he signed a number 2 contract when he went to Ferrari. He actually signed a contract that said he was happy to be the number 2 driver, and that's the way it was set up. As I understand it, those two young guns, they haven't signed neither of them have signed a number 2 contract. So it's not right. And to say the nice guy always finishes last, it's kind of wrong. Damon Hill won a world championship. He's a nice guy. But I do see your point.
Damon Hill is not a nice guy.
Damon Hill was a nice guy. Damon Hill's my childhood hero. Don't you dare ruin that little story for me. I remember Murray Walker as he crossed the line, and I have to stop because I've got a lump in my throat. That was at Japan, 1996. Wonderful race, perfect race. Sorry, Jack Villeneuve, your tyre passed you and went into the crowd, but bye-bye. As far as thank you. As far as Lewis Hamilton goes, that's the perfect way, in my opinion, to fight back to the team, which was, I believe, Hungary. 2014, I'm not slowing up for Nico. So the team gave him instruction, let Nico pass, and Hamilton quite bluntly said, okay, if he crawls over my gearbox and we're slowing each other up, fine, I'll let him pass, but I'm not slowing down for him.
I don't know, it's going to be interesting to see what happens in the next race. Obviously, he's going to get a slap on the wrist from the team, but from what I understand, the team boss actually said that was the right thing to do. So it's a weird one. Whenever team orders get involved, it makes everything a whole lot more complicated than it should be. But I think he's got the talent, and he's showing he's got the talent at the moment. I think that's the important thing.
What are people's predictions for next weekend?
Ollie?
Hamilton to win.
Stephen?
Raikkonen. He's got to win one somewhere and somehow in that red machine.
Personally, I'd love to see...
Jensen Button.
I tell you what I would like to see is all the drivers just letting Jensen pass to get his win at Japan.
Honda getting a win. Jensen effectively in his second home race with his missus being like half Japanese or something like that, or some Japanese in her.
I'd just like to see Arai right for once.
Do you know they don't live together, him and his wife?
Oh, what?
She still lives in Japan with her mother, and he lives in Monaco.
My God.
Poor man.
Personally, I'd love to see Raikkonen win, but I don't think it's going to happen this season. But personally, I think with momentum, I'd probably have to say Vettel will win in Japan.
It's a track that focuses more towards power, a lot more towards power than Singapore does. That instantly leads it back towards the Mercedes.
Yeah, but that first section lends itself to that Ferrari front end. Yeah, that Ferrari front end is quite good, isn't it? That's where it won hands down in Singapore, was the actual handling of the car. And that's got to be down to James Allison, surely.
Which that's pretty much, if they can get a bit of an advantage in Sector 1 in qualifying and just plant their car there, Vettel does a miracle lap 1 like he did and gets, 3 seconds in the first lap, didn't he? In Singapore on lap 1. And does that again, or something similar. Who knows what he can do? Because if he breaks DRS, we'll remember what he was like in his Red Bull days. Okay, situation's different, but
I think this will probably be one of the most important races. Mercedes need to have an answer now. It's been a few races since the summer break. They really haven't been where they were at the first part of the season, and they really need to get back to where they were, or they could just fall short and just lose it to Vettel.
I don't think it's Mercedes haven't been as dominant, 100%. Yeah, I'll go with that. But Hamilton's been pretty much there besides this weekend when they were completely off the pace. But Nico's been the one who's gone into the middle of the pack as a whole and gone back towards 5th, 6th, kind of.
So, what's your final predictions then for the race?
I'm predicting Hamilton, then Vettel, then Rosberg.
Where do you see Jensen finishing?
Lucky to get a point.
That's all the stuff we've got to talk about today, guys. It has been Chris.
Ollie.
Steve.
Sure.
And we'll see you next week for the Japanese show. Thank you.
Bye.
Good night.
Good night.
Tony, thanks for letting Chris out of the kitchen to do this. Much appreciated.
It's fine, honestly. I only let him out his cage every now and then,
Shut the fuck up.
Just make sure that when he's about 3/4 of a distance into a race, that you lock him up at that point. Then everyone else will have a chance to catch up.
Yeah, I'll make sure. I'll turn off his Xbox, yeah?
That's brutal. Do it.
Don't give him any fucking ideas, man. Jeez.